jumping off. Everything green now as it should be. If there's a problem,
I think
hit
that's
a red.
button 25 here.
Ariane 5 is the reliable
BSat-4
workhorse
and
vehicle and a
Intelsat.
senior member of the Ariane family,
Intelsat 37.
designed for heavier satellites and, like tonight's mission, for dual
Remember this is the
launches.
one that
She first flew
was
back
meant to
in
launch
1996 and has since become the standard bearer of Europe's space
engineering
efforts,
nice and then
carrying
shut down
on a
again.
legacy built by her predecessors, Arianes 1 through 4, a history that goes back to 1979. We want to take a look outside, take a first look at the launch vehicle. If you're not familiar with Ariane 5, there are two versions. The one we're using tonight stands 54 meters tall and is in two parts. They call them composites here, a lower composite and an upper one. The lower including the main stage and the two boosters, the upper composite consisting of the two satellites, the vehicle equipment bay where the computers are. It flies on a single engine, as does the lower stage. We'll be describing each in turn as it's functioning. The two satellites there, Intelsat in the upper berth is the heaviest, will be separated first. In the lower berth, BSat-4 due to be separated at plus 47 minutes and 14 seconds. Countdown proceeding normally. 10 minutes to go to liftoff with Intelsat 37E and BSat-4a. Countdown, by the way, is not just a simple 3, 2, 1 liftoff. The professionals here say it's the most intense part of the campaign. In Jupiter, for instance, where we are, an enormous amount of information is coming in from all points across the base, like the green status panels that we saw. And up at the Launch Control Center, where we're going to go in just a minute, they are carrying out enormous number of operations under rather difficult conditions. Key players who make the mission happen, this is the Arianespace High Command, led by Luce Fabregat, whom you just saw, with her Roland Lagier, the Chief Technical Officer. They'll make the call should anything unexpected come up, either before or during the mission. You might see them on the phones, consulting with their teams here at the base or back in Europe. We want to go to a brief presentation of the mission, maybe some things you might want to look out for. After liftoff, you'll see the launcher climb vertically for 13 seconds, then rotate east and head out over the Atlantic, separating the boosters at 2 minutes and 22 seconds after ignition, separating the fairing a minute later at an altitude of 111 kilometers, speed now 2.3 kilometers per second. At plus 9 minutes, the main stage is separated, splashes down in the Atlantic. The upper stage takes over, powering the vehicle to the point where she can separate the satellites. She has reached maximum speed now, 9.3 kilometers per second. Intelsat 37E will be separated at plus 29 minutes and 48 seconds. Then the Silda, that's the structure that lets us carry a second passenger, is released. The composite is spun up to the position demanded by BSat. And finally, BSat-4a will be separated at plus 47 minutes after liftoff.
I'll be here for a while.
8 minutes
God,
on the
Friday.
next to the last Ariane 5 launch of this year. The launcher waiting for her moment in the sun, and speaking about the weather, it's been pretty good all week. We've had some black clouds this morning at about 8:30, but they're gone. 6 o'clock weather check last night showed good conditions for liftoff, so we should have good visibility. Launch window tonight, 38 minutes. Total mission time, 47 minutes. Two other people you'll be seeing today, the mission director, Didier Said, working alongside the range operations manager, also called the DDO, this woman, Fleur Lefebvre, tonight. You'll be hearing her a lot. The DDO makes all the key announcements on the major milestones, both during the countdown and during the flight. And she will shortly call out the 7-minute mark.
À tous de DDO, attention pour la séquence finale lanceur.
She's going to call out the 7-minute mark.
À tous de DDO, rouge ensemble de lancement.
And
Oh, there's a hold immediately.
it was just called a red. You can see it
Huh.
on the screen in the back.
Prepare
So
for
we
a
stop
pause.
the countdown. A red has come up. As you can see, the countdown momentarily holding.
À tous de DDO, arrêt du décompte suite à un rouge, ensemble de lancement. Que tous les moyens restent prêts pour la reprise de la chronologie à
Not again.
H0-7 minutes en cas de retour au vert.
a momentary hold in the countdown, and we should be holding and ready to resume the countdown.
Guess I'm
What
maybe-
happens when we have a red, as we mentioned before, we have the green status panels, and you see a red on the launch zone here. A red is like a stop sign. What happens when we see a stop sign? We stop and think. It's a normal procedure. It's built in to the system, and people are checking to see what the problem is, and they're trying to fix it, and as soon as they fix it, we will be back once the countdown has been resumed. So sit tight, don't go away. We'll be right back when the countdown resumes.
As will I. Let's hope they don't ignite this engine only for it to shut off again.
21h49
Okay, it's green
TU.
again. Needs by the looks of it. Waiting for something. Anything? Please, just give me a sign.
À tous de DDO, attention pour la séquence finale, lanceur. Top, page 0 moins 7 minutes, reprise du temps des comptes.
All right, you see we're back in business. We've gone
There we
from
go.
red.
À tous de DDO, le nouvel H0 visé est à 21h56 minutes TU, soit 18h56 minutes local.
We've gone from red back to green. Whatever the problem was didn't hold us up for long. We're in
Thank
the
goodness.
7-minute mark
Thank
again.
goodness.
This brings us into what is known as the automatic or the synchronized sequence, the final moments of the final countdown, a complex series of operations running right down to liftoff. Our stage is set. I'm going to go back to my broadcast booth while we're shifting the scenery. Take a look at a film on the launch campaign to see how Ariane 5 is ready for her mission.
To the video. To the video.
The final phase of the launch campaign, which started on 18th of July, was the structural integration of the launcher, followed by the electrical and pneumatic checkout on the launcher integration building. After a technical exception, the launcher was transferred on its launch table to the final integration building on the 14th of August.
We're going to Antonov
Intelsat
124.
37E arrived in French Guiana with an Antonov plane in Cayenne Félix Éboué Airport.
Say it's on
The
Antonov
satellite equipment
124.
was installed in the S5C North building to begin its preparation phase. Later on, the satellite was transferred to the fueling S5B building, where the Boeing team proceeded to the filling of the tanks. BSat-4a arrived as well in French Guiana with an Antonov plane in Cayenne Félix Éboué
Lots of
Airport.
Antonovs. I need to go there.
BSat-4a was installed in the S5C South building and began its preparation phase. The satellite was then transferred to the fueling S5A building, where the SSL team proceeded to the filling of the tanks. The combined operations between satellites and launcher began at day-11 with the Intelsat 37E mating on the flight adapter. Then transferred to the final assembly building, the satellite was integrated on top of the Silda and encapsulated by the fairing and Atlas mated on the upper part of the launch vehicle. On its side, BSat-4a began the combined operation with launcher at day-9 in the S5A with flight adapter mating. After transfer to the BAF, BSat-4a was mated on top of the launcher and covered by the upper composite.
The composite
The
being the
final
Silda,
preparations of the
fairing, and the
launcher for the
BSat.
flight, as well as the pellet encapsulation and the integration of the launcher were carried out. The pyrotechnic arming of the launcher was performed before the
Pyrotechnic being
launcher
the separation.
loop, which gave the authorization to transfer on the launch pad. Once the ground installations and the launcher are put into flight configuration,
Here's the question.
we shall conclude with the final chronology phase before liftoff. A special thank you goes to all the operational teams for their huge efforts and contribution to take us through this very smooth launch campaign so far.
Joshua Jampel back in the booth. Just a final word on the launch campaign to add to the film. Every campaign is special. because the people involved change, of course, and with each campaign they're faced with special anomalies and requirements.
Please
For
tell
the
me you're not
rest,
going to mention.
the procedures are pretty standard. Assembly the launcher is pretty
Are you
regular.
not going to mention the
Green
elephant in
status
the room?
panels on the right again you just saw. We mentioned them briefly before. The real-time summary of all the launch activities here in the space base. And as you see, we're back to green. Some 1,700 people working around the space base in all. Our cameras are here in Jupiter, but many others busy at other sites. Another place that's very active is the launch zone, where the launch management teams are working under the direction of the launch operations manager, Klaus Zell, today you saw. Their day began at 7:30 this morning with their first operations. Right now, 2 teams working up there. One is responsible for the ground operations, the other for readiness of the Ariane 5. The launch site operations manager heads up one group. He coordinates with mission control for final authorization to launch. And when all the conditions are right, he then okays the automatic sequence at the 7-minute mark, which we saw. In all, about 100 people up there working in launch control, going over the final checks and verification on all parts of Ariane's launch system. 2.5 minutes to go to launch of the 95th Ariane 5 mission. And here in Jupiter, the VIPs and the invited guests are very shortly going to begin to make their ways outside to watch the liftoff. There are 2 terraces on either side of the building. It gives a fine view onto the launch pad. Ariane 5's flight path takes her right over Jupiter, and when the skies are clear, you get quite a sight. This split-screen image shows the propellant feeder arms in the middle of the launcher, liquid hydrogen on the left, liquid oxygen on the right. What are they doing? Well, they're putting propellant into the upper stage tanks, and you'll see these arms pull back at -7 seconds, 7 seconds before ignition. It's one of the last things you'll see, so we like to take a minute to mention it. And you see the yellow arms in the middle of the launch vehicle there extending from the gantry. The first weather check just before noon today local time gave the go-ahead to fill both the upper and lower stages with their liquid hydrogen and oxygen. A minute 20 seconds to go till the 9th launch of the year for Arianespace as we enter the final quarter of the year. Coming up in the last minute, and you'll hear the DDO call that out.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
1 minute mark, 60 seconds coming up.
Top H0 moins 1 minute.
1
So
minute.
we're into the final moments of Final Countdown. Give us a chance to say hello to our friends at Intelsat in Washington, to our friends at BSat in Tokyo, to the Boeing and SSL teams in Los Angeles and Palo Alto, California. Locally, to the Kourou, Sinemari, and Cayenne sites, to our industrial partners ESA and Kines, and to all of you following on the internet. We hope you're enjoying it. If you're not settled in, pull up a chair and enjoy the launch.
Pull up a
Because
chair,
we are gonna
we'll
cut
be
away
here for a
and let you
while.
listen to the DDO as she calls out the final seconds. Watch for the cryogenic arms to open. That sets the ball rolling at
T-minus 20.
7 seconds.
Which we've seen on this particular rocket before, 15.
À tous de DDO, attention pour les décomptes finales.
If
10,
this happens again,
9,
9,
8,
8,
7,
7,
6,
6,
5,
arms back.
4, 3, 2, 1.
You can see the burn off of the hydrogen. Allumage Vulcan.
Allumage Vulcain.
Allumage AP.
Allumage des 2 EAP et décollage Ariane 239.
There we go, the Ariane finally gets off the ground after over a month after scheduled.
Les paramètres à bord sont corrects.
And as the DDO calls out that all is working flawlessly on board, Ariane 5, right on time, begins her mission, lifting off with a lot of fire, as you saw, carrying her 2 new satellites. The 2 boosters are providing
La
90,
trajectoire
that's
est
90%
nominale,
of
tous
our
les paramètres à
thrust
bord sont
right
normaux.
now. The DDO saying all is fine on board. 776 tons is our weight, is our mass at liftoff, and to get that sort of mass off the ground, you need, of course, a lot of push. Ariane is burning 5 tons of fuel every second, 2.5 tons in each booster every second, and the core stage burning another 300 kilos of fuel per second. Ariane 5 now following the
Tous les
program
paramètres à bord
on the
sont
onboard
normaux.
computer, which gives all the orders, including stage separations, which we're going to see in just a minute. We're in the first of 4 flight phases. We'll describe each in turn and in detail so you can follow Ariane as she heads across the Atlantic eastward. Right now, the first flight phase, as we watch these wonderful pictures,
La propulsion est correcte, la
the single
trajectoire est
first
nominale.
stage engine and the 2 boosters
Everything's
are burning.
normal.
The boosters will each consume their 240 tons in just over 2 minutes. They are the first to be extinguished. You'll hear that from the DDO.
Le pilotage est calme.
This first flight phase using both cryogenic and storable propellant, a mix. Cryogenic propulsion offers certain advantages over storable propellant. Better, more precise performance. It can be turned off and on. Motors can function longer. Arianes 1, 2, 4 owe their success to storable propellant, not cryogenics. You see the points of light burning? Those are the boosters and the core stage.
I think that's
And
separation there.
very shortly you should be able to see
I have seen that.
Séparation des 2 EAP, la trajectoire est nominale.
DDO has
Everything's normal.
confirmed extinction and separation of the boosters. There's the 2 orange points of light on either side, the boosters falling away. The white point of light in the middle is the core stage continuing
Vulcan.
to burn. The boosters will fall 500 kilometers from shore in a protected area. French
La
Guiana
propulsion est
chosen
nominale.
in part as a base for its opening on the ocean, on the Atlantic, launches posing no threat to local population. We'll have more on that a bit later on. The speed we need to inject a satellite is roughly 9 kilometers per second, 9,000 kilometers an hour. And you can see on the bottom right, our speed now
La
is just over
trajectoire est
2
nominale.
kilometers per second. Our altitude is over on the left, over 100 kilometers up. We're getting close to separation of the fairing. There we are.
Which is there.
Séparation coiffe,
is
paramètres à
given
bord
by
normaux.
2 pyrotechnic systems, one horizontal, one vertical, and you can see one half of the fairing falling away on the left, the other half out of camera range on the right. We can separate the fairing now, revealing Intelsat 37E to the elements. Why? Because we're out of the dense layers of the atmosphere, over 100 kilometers up, neither friction nor heating to disturb the passengers. We also discard any dead weight, so we can maximize the launcher's performance. Fairing weighs
La propulsion
2.5
est
tons.
nominale.
We mentioned earlier that the countdown was a complicated process and a long one. Final countdown actually began about 11 hours ago this morning. We here saw only the final moments. First checks of the electrical services, for example, began 10.5 hours ago. Filling of the lower stage began 4 hours ago with the liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen. Filling of the upper stage began 3 hours ago with the same.
La trajectoire est nominale.
Ariane 5 is the heavy lift launcher, remember, the 2 other members of the family, Soyuz, lifting
Soyuz is
middle-sized
Russian, not
payloads,
part of Ariane.
2 to 3 tons, and Vega, the light lift vehicle for missions of roughly 1 ton. With its family of launch vehicles, Arianespace is the reference providing launches of any mass to any orbit at any time.
Le pilotage est calme.
Not really.
Arianespace, part of
est
Europe's
nominale.
space effort, which is a 3-way affair among Arianespace, ESA, the European Space Agency, and the French National Space Agency, CNES. You find them all here, along with the customers. Arianespace in charge of operating the family of launchers and of marketing the launch services and the Ariane program. ESA funding new programs, and CNES overseeing coordination of all space base operations. The Jupiter
paramètres à bord
building,
sont
you're looking
normaux.
down into the fishbowl where the operational people are. Jupiter's in 2 parts. The invited guests and VIPs on one side, and the operational people there on the other. The Guyana Space Center, Europe's spaceport, certified ISO 14001 back in 2004, which
What's
means
that
its
mean?
activities meet the international environmental standards. That includes everything that goes on in the technical center, Jupiter, where we are, and the payload preparation units, the test bench for the boosters, and all the rest.
Il reste
We're
3
gonna go
minutes de propulsion
shortly,
de l'étage
I
à
hope, to a
propulsion
replay.
cryotechnique.
Of the launch, and you can re-experience those beautiful moments, those beautiful shots. Here's your replay as Ariane lifted off just about 6 minutes ago. This is the first of what we hope will be many replays. Seen from different locations, we have cameras at several of the half-dozen observation sites that are stationed across the base, and they furnish us with shots from different angles. Here's another. The closest observation site is called Toucan, like the bird, and that's where the VIPs usually are. Toucan is closest to the base.
La trajectoire est nominale, la propulsion est correcte.
As the DDO says everything is fine on board, we are in
That
the
sounds
second
ominous.
powered flight phase. The single-engine core stage is burning now. The boosters have done their work. All of
Il
Ariane's
reste 2
trajectory.
minutes de propulsion de l'étage principal
As we
cryotechnique.
watch a third replay. All of Ariane's trajectory has been designed, of course, to be followed from the ground. The launcher is sending radar and telemetry back, and a network of stations keeps constant watch on the health of all her systems. The launcher sending back radar and telemetry to the Earth, the ground stations picking up the signal. Telemetry is launch vehicle data.
Le pilotage est calme.
Information on 1,500, roughly 1,500 parameters is collected, transmitted back to the ground stations every second. And they record all the launcher's functions and vital signs throughout the launch. You see the list of the ground stations. Galileo is behind us here in Kourou. The point of light that's moving represents the launcher's trajectory. Natal in yellow.
Acquisition de la télémesure
has
lanceur
just
par la
picked up
station
the
de
signal. That's
Natal,
the first
au
downlink
Brésil.
tracking station over the border in our neighbor Brazil. A station run by the Brazilian Defense Department, running it for the CNES in an agreement with ESA. It sees the lower stage burnout and separation. And what do the ground stations like Natal
La
do?
trajectoire est nominale, il
With all
reste
this
moins
information,
d'1
you may be
minute de
asking, well,
propulsion
that's
de
a good
l'étage
question.
principal
Customers,
cryotechnique.
very important, get immediate data on the spacecraft. Some data are analyzed in real time. Other data are studied after the flight to learn how the vehicle performed on its mission. A complete analysis is carried out about a week after each launch. So you can imagine the enormous archives this gives Arianespace, a wealth of technical information going back to the very first launch of Ariane 1, which was on Christmas Eve, 1979. We're waiting now for confirmation of extinction of the lower stage. You'll see on the left the nozzle will turn off. There it is, shutting down.
Preparing for separation.
And we're waiting now separation of the
Fin
lower
de
stage.
propulsion de l'étage principal
Separation of the lower
cryotechnique
stage and ignition of the upper stage.
et séparation de l'EPC.
These three commands coming right on time, given by the onboard computer in about 13
Allumage
seconds.
de l'étage
And you
supérieur cryotechnique.
The lower stage falling away into the Atlantic. You see that thanks to our onboard camera. It'll fall off the Gulf of Guinea. So we're now into the third and final powered flight phase. The single upper stage engine will burn until
La
plus 25
propulsion
minutes,
est nominale.
or 16 minutes roughly. The job of the upper stage, is to take the satellites to their injection point, to position them for separation, and then release them. That is its propulsion role.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
But she has a second role, and that comes during Ariane 5's ballistics phase, as they call it. That comes later in the flight, and we'll have more on that coming up. Tonight, Arianespace flight number
La trajectoire
239,
est parfaitement nominale.
Intelsat 37E and BSat-4a, a standard double launch, 2 communication satellites. But throughout the long history of the Ariane launcher, and with the addition of Soyuz and Vega in the recent years, Arianespace has launched for all types of missions and all types of orbits. We have another film, first of a series of films coming up for you now.
Propulsion nominale de
look
l'étage
at
supérieur
BSat-4a.
cryotechnique et pilotage calme.
The fifth Ariane flight of this year will embark in its lower position BSat-4a. The satellite has been designed and built by SSL for the Japanese leading broadcasting satellite operator BSat. SSL is also our direct interface for the launch services, as BSat-4a is being orbited as a part of a turnkey contract between BSat and SSL. Arianespace has launched all BSat satellites since the creation of this Japanese operator, reflecting the exceptional confidence of BSat on our launch services, what makes us very proud and honored. BSat-4a is based on the highly reliable and well-proven 1300 bus of a space system LORAD. It will be the 64th satellite of this manufacturer to be orbited by Arianespace, and there are 3 more in our backlog. We would like to thank BSat and SSL for the confidence in Arianespace. All the best for your LEOP, and see you soon for a future launch campaign.
We mentioned that there are 2 different propulsion systems on Ariane 5. Cryogenics, that's very cold fuel, as used in the main stage, more efficient than solid propellant, which is used in the boosters. Basically, solids are for getting us off the ground, away from the pull of the Earth. The key parameter for the main stage is kinetic energy, or acquiring speed. Once out of the atmosphere, there's no more drag on the vehicle, and we can focus on thrust. Cryogenics, on the other hand, are for more precision orienting of the vehicle, and of course they also allow a stage to be reignited, but that's in the other version of Ariane, the one that's not being used tonight.
The one used for Galileo satellites.
One advantage of storable fuel is that it doesn't evaporate like the cryogenic fuel does. Storable fuel
that's
is
not
also
lost its
cheaper.
thing.
So you see, performance,
I hope that's
security,
just a
and
graphic.
cost dictate which system is
Rich.
used. Soyuz
Nice.
works on kerosene and liquid
La
oxygen,
trajectoire est
sort of
nominale.
semi-cryogenic,
Yeah,
if you will. The
trajectory still.
Russians and the Americans have mastered
Normal.
this system, but the Europeans prefer cryogenics.
Sure, if that's what you're
Intelsat
into, go ahead.
arrived here in French Guiana on August 2nd, went right to the satellite preparation buildings for its checks. BSat arrived on August 4th. We saw a bit film on BSat, now a first look at Intelsat 37E.
Intelsat 37E is the 4th satellite of the EPIC family to be launched on Ariane after Intelsat 29E and 33E, both launched last year, and Intelsat 32E earlier in 2017. And it is the 59th satellite to be launched for Intelsat by Ariane. After the launch last May of SES-15, the spacecraft in the Boeing 702 SP series, and of BSat-2 launched in June and belonging to the 702 HP family, we are now launching a 702 MP. This perfectly illustrates the adaptation of the Arianespace family of launch vehicles to the various market needs.
Intelsat 37E, it will provide service to the Atlantic Ocean region for South America, Africa, and Europe, giving our customers more capacity and flexibility for interconnectivity for years to come.
10 minutes left in the upper stage burn. While you were watching the film, we were picked up by our next downrange tracking station, Ascension Island. Tiny island, 10 square kilometers in the South Atlantic, belongs to the UK. NASA had a station there until 1989. They closed it, and ESA decided to build its own. The French Guiana site, we started to mention, chosen in 1964 among 14 possibilities, including Australia and Scandinavia, when the French wanted to build a new base. They had been working in Hamagur, Algeria from 1947 to 1967. From this base, in the Sahara, they took their first steps in space. They tested solid and liquid propulsion engines, they launched their first missiles, their first
Le
sounding rockets,
pilotage est
and
calme
finally,
et la
the
propulsion
satellite.
est nominale.
that lifted France's first satellite in 1965. Here, in French Guiana, they found everything they were looking for. A large opening on the ocean. We have 50 kilometers of coastline, so we can fly both north and east. Low population density, 250,000 people in French Guiana. The site here free from hurricanes, which can strike other parts of the world. Finally, it offers nearby hills where
Les
remote
paramètres à bord sont
telemetry
normaux,
facilities can
trajectoire
be
nominale.
installed.
And so we won't be seeing many launches of KSC for a while.
For
because
now,
VMF
another look at our first passenger, Intelsat 37E, with its CEO, Steve Spengler.
Thank you for joining us for the launch of Intelsat 37E, the 5th of our Intelsat EPIC high-throughput satellites. Today's launch continues the EPIC journey that we began in January of 2016. We now have coverage from the southern cone of South America, across North America, the Atlantic, and all of the Eurasian and African continents. We're advancing the Intelsat EPIC technology. Intelsat 37E includes new innovations that further our performance goals.
I presume E stands
The
for
Intelsat
Epic.
37E satellite features power sharing technology to optimize performance for specific applications and regions. This satellite also includes steerable beams to support high-performance mobility and government applications in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Intelsat 37E is also the first high-throughput satellite to offer full beam interconnectivity between C, KU, and KA beams. This unique feature, enabled by the digital payload, underscores the flexibility and high performance our customers have come to expect from the Intelsat EPIC fleet. This is especially relevant to our community at 342 degrees east, which includes many broadband and network service providers that will transition from the Intelsat 901 satellite. These customers are using the higher performance to achieve better business economics for applications ranging from 3G and 4G wireless network expansions to broadband for commercial shipping. On behalf of Intelsat's employees around the world, let me express sincere appreciation to our manufacturer Boeing and our launcher Arianespace for their commitment to delivering a
It's
successful
Arianespace, get it
program
right.
for Intelsat. I'd also like to recognize the Intelsat team for their work on Intelsat 37E. All of your colleagues are proud of your technical excellence and leadership. We appreciate and applaud your efforts to make Intelsat 37E a success. Finally, thank you to our customers for taking this epic journey with us. Go Intelsat
No, that was a
37E.
pun.
All's well on board, and we have been picked up by our next downrange tracking station at Libreville, as you can see on the screen. That's on the west coast of Africa in Gabon. Till Ariane 3, the last downrange station, was in the Ivory Coast, a place called Akakro. For Ariane 4, we needed a new station farther
Acquisition de la télémesure lanceur par la station de Libreville au Gabon.
1986. The station receives telemetry for about a quarter of an hour and sees the upper stage burn out. And while we're on the subject of telemetry, there has been a slight loss of the telemetry signal today, which is quite normal. Sometimes it happens. The ground stations suffer a brief blackout due to the launcher's position. Tonight there was a brief
La
loss of the signal
propulsion de l'étage
between
supérieur
Natal and Ascension
cryotechnique
Island,
est toujours
just over
nominale.
a minute. Another between Ascension Island and Libreville, of not even 20 seconds. We don't lose the information. It's stored on board. The exact times and durations of the signal loss are programmed into the vehicle equipment bay. The telemetry unit is programmed to record the data it would normally be sending down to the ground station, and
Yeah,
it's
send
also
it to next
programmed
time.
to start sending these data to the stations when the signal returns. So all is well there. We're going to turn our attention once again to Intelsat for a more detailed explanation
La
of the
trajectoire
EPIC
est nominale.
series. Five minutes to go in the upper stage burn, cutoff
Ooh.
due at plus 25 minutes and 28 seconds. Intelsat 37E is the 59th Intelsat launched by Arianespace. The relationship between the two companies goes back to 1983, when Arianespace orbited Intelsat 507. Intelsat 37E is the 5th in the Epic NG series and the 4th in the series launched by Arianespace. Launch tonight comes just over a year after we launched the Intelsat Charter with Intelsat 33E and 36 in August of last year. That was flight 232. And 2 more Intelsats
Il reste
remain
4
in
minutes
the
de propulsion de l'étage supérieur cryotechnique.
as the DDO says, 4 more minutes in the upper stage burn. Intelsat 37E, built by Boeing, and is the 55th Boeing-made satellite to be launched by Arianespace, the last being Viasat-2 on flight 237 back in June. And 2 more Boeing-built spacecraft remain to be launched, Horizon 3A and Viasat 3F1. We're coming to you from the Guyana Space Center live, the world's only dedicated commercial space base where Arianespace operates the launcher family. Our next film explores the relationship between Intelsat and Arianespace, as well as giving a look at the satellite's first
Tous les
maneuvers
paramètres
after
à bord sont
separation.
normaux.
As you may imagine, the mission integration for this launch went very smoothly, as the VA-239 mission is a kind of repeat of the VA-232 mission of August last year, when we launched 2 satellites very similar to the ones of tonight, Intelsat 33E and Intelsat 36. Boeing, Intelsat, Arianespace and CHD have now been working together for more than 30 years, and we are obviously very proud of all the work accomplished over these years together. So thank you to Intelsat and Boeing teams for their confidence, and we are looking forward to seeing you soon in crew.
After spacecraft separation, Boeing will continue the mission through handover of the satellite to Intelsat. They will begin by acquiring the satellite after separation and preparing it for orbit raising to its orbital test slot. After testing is completed, the satellite will be moved to its final location and begin providing service. Once again, it's been my pleasure to work with Boeing and Arianespace on another successful launch campaign. This is my 8th mission with Arianespace, and I look forward to many more in the future. So thanks again to all those involved in making this day happen, and to all of our families who take care of things at home while we are away launching rockets.
During the interviews, we were picked up by our last downrange tracking station, Malindi, in Kenya on the east coast of Africa. So you see, Ariane has crossed Africa in 6 minutes. That's at least as good as Puck. If you remember Midsummer Night's Dream, I'll put a girdle around the Earth in 40 minutes. Do the calculations, I think Ariane does better than that. Malindi, there are actually 2 stations. Like Ariane 4 needed a new station, so did Ariane 5. So we opened a 5th tracking station for Ariane 5's second launch in 1997. It receives Ariane 5 data the longest for 3 hours after liftoff. It will see the upper stage burnout and both satellite separations. While we're waiting for the separation, for the cutoff of
Il reste 1 minute de propulsion de l'étage
some
supérieur
left,
cryotechnique.
This launch is the 292nd mission performed by the Ariane family and the 266th launch carried out by a member of the Ariane family from the Guyana Space Center. Intelsat 37E and BSat-4a are the 564th and 565th satellites launched by Arianespace. They are also the 192nd and the 193rd satellites to be launched on an Ariane 5. Total weight of our passengers today, 10 tons. Both satellites have 15-year lifespans. We're coming up on extinction of the upper stage engine. You can see the nozzle on the left shut down, and you'll hear the DDO confirm it. There we go.
Yep, shut down.
Ariane 5 has hit her maximum speed.
Extinction de l'étage supérieur
On the
cryotechnique.
bottom right,
Trajectoire
9.3
parfaitement
kilometers. Now with
nominale.
power shut down, you'll see our speed start to drop as we move into this new coasting phase. This is the last flight phase, the only one that's not powered. You see the speed is dropping already. We're at 9.2.
Début de la manœuvre d'orientation au profit de la charge du pilote Intelsat 37E.
At plus 29.48, her speed will be 8.7 kilometers per second. When she releases the Silda, that's the carrying structure for the second passenger, at plus 31 minutes and 54 seconds, she'll be flying at 8.4 kilometers per second. And when she separates BSat at plus 47 minutes and 14 seconds, her speed will be down to 6.4 kilometers per second. We mentioned the launch replays earlier. We said there were several observation sites here in French Guiana scattered around the base, all named after local birds: Carapa, Agami, Ibis. And we talked about Toucan, which is the closest site to the launch pad at 2 kilometers, normally, where the invited VIP guests watch the launch from. There's one young fellow we want to mention. We hope he's following the launch. His name is Léol Mesfin, and he's a high school student from Ethiopia, 17 years old, the winner of the Intelsat Star Awards, which is a contest that encourages young people to explore innovative thinking in space technology. They had to write an essay this year imagining the role played by satellite technology in the future of Africa, and he had the winning essay. So, Léo,
Fin de la manœuvre d'orientation au profit d'Intelsat 37E, trajectoire nominale.
With the upper stage engine shut down, we have entered the coasting phase, but that doesn't mean that nothing's happening. The composite is being maneuvered and spun up in a series of 20 operations. You can see she's being moved there. These operations range in time from a few seconds to a few minutes. Now, why do we do this? Well, we have to separate the first satellite, Intelsat, in one direction, then the Silda in a second direction, finally our second passenger in yet a third direction. Ariane's attitude and control system uses small thrusters to perform these maneuvers. That's what's going on right now. You might be able to see them popping on and off on the screen. There are 12 thrusters in all, 4 clusters of 3 on the outside of the upper stage. They use gaseous hydrogen to provide the thrust. Another place very busy tonight, the CVI, or the Quick Look Telemetry Display Control Center. These teams have all the means for receiving, processing, storing, and analyzing all the data coming in from the ground stations along Ariane's flight path. Remember, we talked about the advantages of the French Guiana site. One was nearby hills where we can receive telemetry from the launcher. This is where those telemetry installations are, following and analyzing all the key flight data coming in, and they're reporting the flight data of the launcher back to the teams here in Jupiter. All part of the great information flow from points across the base to mission control. Coming up on confirmation from the DDO on separation of our upper passenger, due in just a few seconds. This is always a moment of high concentration. The teams have gone through these procedures before, but it does call for tremendous focus. You don't want to say tense, but focused, concentrated, gives you an idea. All eyes on the computer screens and all ears on the phones as the operational people await confirmation of our satellite separation, due in about 10 seconds.
So that's going to be Intelsat separated. Another 10 or so minutes, then
we'll confirm the separation.
There's going to be the separation of BSat.
Animation.
Do we have visible separation of satellite?
There. We seem to have it, waiting for the DDO's confirmation.
And it just never comes.
Séparation Intelsat 37E.
There.
She seemed way too excited.
First good news of the evening. Successful separation by Ariane 5 of our first
good news of the
Intelsat 37E right on time, just off the east coast of Africa.
She just said first good news
Notice
of the
the people
evening.
here in Jupiter politely holding their applause because the mission is not over. We still have to separate our final passenger, BSat-4a. The first operations, now that Intelsat is up, the signal will be acquired by the Kumsan station in South Korea in about 27 minutes. Biprop transfer orbit will start. That will take 12 days. It'll start from day 2. You can see on the animation Intelsat drifting away from the mothership, eventually getting to her orbital slot. Start of deployments and acquisition, and then in-orbit testing starts in about 2 weeks. Then she will start a drift to her operational longitude, 342 degrees east. Next up is Silda separation in about a minute. A final word on Intelsat, established in 1964. Early bird, you might remember. That was Intelsat 1, launched back in 1965. It was the world's first commercial communications satellite.
Really? Huh.
Intelsat was privatized in 2001 after nearly 40 years as an intergovernmental organization. Intelsat signed to fly with Arianespace even
Manœuvre
before the company
d'orientation en cours
was
et
formed
nominale.
nearly 40 years ago. It's a real sign of confidence. Turning to the Silda now, which is the Ariane double launch system. That's the black structure on the left of the composite. We mentioned Ariane 5, known for double launches. She's the only commercial launcher capable of lifting 2 heavy satellites. We've done hundreds, each one requiring a Silda, which lets us carry a second satellite.
Fin de la manœuvre d'orientation au profit du Silda.
There, we have right on time the separation of the Silda. Again, the same
Séparation du système lancement double Ariane.
it away from the mothership, revealing to the elements BSat-4a, which is due for its separation in about 15 minutes. BSat, or the Broadcasting Satellite System Corporation, headquartered in Tokyo, 84 employees, majority shareholder NHK, Japan Broadcasting Corporation, contracted with Space Systems L'Oréal to build and launch BSat-4a in 2015. BSat-4a is the 9th satellite launched by Arianespace for the Japanese operator. Arianespace has launched all the BSat Corporation satellites since its creation in 1993. For its first satellite, BSat-1, was built by Hughes, which is now part of Boeing, in 1994-95, and Arianespace launched it in 1997. BSat-4a is also the 30th launch services contract for a commercial geostationary satellite that Arianespace has won in Japan. Arianespace has launched 29 satellites into geostationary transfer orbit for the nation's satellite operators and currently has about 3/4, 75% of the market share in Japan. And 3 more satellites remain to be launched for Japan in the manifest. BSat-4a, built by SSL, Space Systems L'Oréal, in a turnkey contract for BSat, and is the 62nd satellite made by SSL, or by its predecessors, to be launched by Arianespace, the 64th satellite launched, which is based on an SSL platform. The last SSL satellite launched by Arianespace was a pair, actually, Star 1D1, JCSat-15, both built by SSL, launched on an SSL charter in December of last year. That was Flight 234. Both builders tonight have flown charters with us recently.
Like the music's jumping. Oh, that's a hangar. That's a hangar. That's an airship hangar.
We are in the final stage of the mission, called the ballistics phase. We are 12 minutes from separation of our second passenger, Ariane 5, performing flawlessly. We mentioned that we have to separate the 2 satellites and the Silda in 3 different directions. We also have to release them at 3 different altitudes. Intelsat was separated at 1,400 kilometers up, then the Silda at 1,800 kilometers up, and BSat will go in yet a 3rd direction and a third altitude 5,600 kilometers up, all this to avoid any risk of collision, of course. A word on SSL. 1957, the company was founded in the San Francisco Bay Area as a division of Philco. Began launching satellites in 1960. The following year, bought by Ford and renamed Ford Aerospace. In 1990, it was acquired by the Loral Corporation, renamed Space Systems Loral, and today it's one of the top providers of commercial satellites. Do you remember our mass at liftoff, 776 tons? What's left of that, do you think? The vehicle lost 240 tons
maybe
of fuel
10 at most.
in each booster. That was 2 minutes after liftoff. It used up all the 175 tons of fuel in the first stage, lost another 14 tons of dry mass that was the lower stage, lost the first passenger 6.4 tons and the Silda half a ton. So what's left? The upper stage, empty of its fuel, that's 4 tons, down from 19 when filled. The VEB, Vehicle Equipment Bay, weighs a ton. BSat weighs 3.5 tons, and its adapter 140 kilos. So roughly added up, 8.5 tons.
That's pretty close to my 10-ton guess.
776. Another look now at BSat, and we'll be back with the end of the mission.
BSat is the leading broadcasting satellite operator in Japan. We provide digital HDTV services in 12 GHz BSS band all over Japan using BSat-3a, 3b, and 3c. BSat-4a is a successor to BSat-3a and has 24 Ku band transponders. BSat-4a will reinforce current BSat-3 fleet to provide robust and reliable service with full redundancy. Furthermore, BSat-4a will be used to provide 4K 8K Ultra HDTV services. Regular service of the 4K 8K is planned to be started in the end of 2018. Our first satellite, BSat-1a, was launched from Kourou in 1997. Since then, all of the BSat satellites were launched by Arianespace. This is my third launch campaign. I'm always impressed by well-organized and friendly teamwork of Arianespace and CSV. BSat-4a is the first satellite we have purchased from SSL. We have been pleased with their established heritage and advanced technologies. We expect this satellite plays an important role in the 4K 8K service in Japan.
Back with you again. Grant Gould there. Separation of BSat in about 9 minutes. Arianespace having another busy year here at the spaceport. One reason is that launches here at the CSG are getting closer and closer together. This thanks to a shorter time between launches, less than 15 days between most of the 6 launches in the earlier part of the year. And if you go back just over 12 months, Arianespace has for the first time launched 14 times in that period, the dates being September 15th of last year, that was the 7th Vega flight, and tonight. And 2 more launches are set before the year is out, a Vega mission in November and another Ariane in December. There will be the 3rd Vega and the 6th Ariane launches of the year to round out 2017. One interesting note, I bet you didn't know, among the names proposed in 1972
Début de la 4e manœuvre d'orientation au profit de BSat-4a.
Cygnus, Ganymede, Penelope, and Vega. Vega got rejected because at the time it was also the name of a Belgian beer, which is no longer made. The name of our Vega vehicle that's part of the Ariane family comes from in Italian Vettore Europeo di Generazione Avanzata, or New Generation European Vehicle. The vehicle equipment bay, you see, that's the white circle behind the satellite. This is the cockpit of the launcher, if you will. The VEB orchestrates all the flight commands, piloting orders are given by its calculators and the electronic systems, and all the equipment in there, all the computers are doubled, which means there's a backup system for everything in case one breaks down or encounters any problems. The mission can continue. VEB weighs nearly a ton, 970 kilos. Our final film now, another look at BSat and its builder,
La phase balistique
SSL.
est parfaitement nominale.
I've been on site the past few weeks as we prepared
BSat-4a for launch. BSat-4a is SSL's first spacecraft program for BSat Corporation of Japan. It's been a delivery in orbit contract, whereas SSL is responsible for not only the spacecraft and the necessary ground control station upgrades to integrate BSat-4a into the rest of the fleet, but we're also responsible for launch services and launch services management. SSL has been providing launch services for many of our customers for many years now, back to N-STAR-A, which launched in August of 1995, and an Arianespace provided Ariane 44P. I mean, many things have changed since our first delivery in orbit contract, but many things remain the same, such as SSL's ability to provide bundled, turnkey satellite solutions that meet our customers' needs, including advanced spacecraft, including launch services. Another thing that hasn't changed since our first delivery in orbit contract is the excellent relationship SSL enjoys with Arianespace. This will be our 64th SSL-built spacecraft launch on an Arianespace launch vehicle, dating back to our very first one in 1983 on an Ariane 1 for Intelsat, our co-passenger on this flight. A special thank you today to BSat Corporation for entrusting this important program to SSL. It's been our pleasure supporting your mission here at the launch site.
You heard Grant Gould there. He's qualified to talk about the changes here at the space base. He knows Arianespace and the Kourou site very well. He's been coming here, I believe, since the Ford Aerospace days. You're watching Arianespace flight number 239, and if you just joined us, we've successfully released our first passenger. We're awaiting separation of our second passenger in about 5 minutes. Looking ahead to after separation, the satellites go to GTO, Geostationary Transfer Orbit, which will be the end of the Ariane mission, but life will just be beginning, of course, for the passengers. Ariane puts satellites into a transfer orbit, and the satellites get to their final slots under their own power. And getting to the final orbit can use up a lot of the satellite's onboard fuel, and that fuel is its lifeline and its lifetime. Tonight's satellites have to live up to 15 years. Sometimes it can be longer, which is why it's very important to save fuel when you can. Now, this is often done, like tonight, by what they call optimization of the trajectory. Ariane is able to inject the two satellites closer to their final orbits, and this is possible due to the extra performance available in the Ariane 5. We're launching 10 tons tonight, so we're almost at the limit, but we can still use a part of this performance margin and
La manœuvre de mise en spin se poursuit nominalement.
Orbit. From the satellite point of view, what does this mean? Well, customers need to expend a lot less of their own onboard fuel to reach their final geosynchronous orbit. And the more you save on propellant getting there, of course, the longer you can remain in service up there. Something else you might not know? All the systems we've been talking about tonight on the launcher, the energy systems, propellant, batteries, everything, they all have a sell-by date. Yes, if they're not used by these limits, guess what? They get thrown out. There's a similar system on airplanes. There's a similar system in your car, and of course on the butter in the refrigerator. It covers everything on Ariane, from turbo pumps to screws. It applies to some of the clamp bands, for example, that hold the satellites in place inside the fairing, because they work with a system of spring compression, and the tension in the springs could go lax with time. They think of everything, don't they?
Well, they have to.
We're still in what they call a coasting phase, also known as a free-flying phase, and while we have a moment,
I doubt it's a free-falling phase.
return to our quiz question. See if anybody at Boeing or SSL can get this one. Are you ready? Arianespace quiz question number 239. This is not the first time that Boeing and SSL have flown together on an Ariane launch. When did it happen before? Again, Arianespace quiz question number 239. The two satellite manufacturers, Boeing and SSL, have flown together on an Ariane launch before. When did it happen? Or what were the two satellites? I'll give you a hint. It only happened once. I'll give you another hint. It wasn't very long ago. Think it over. We'll have the answer for you in a few minutes. Meanwhile, with 2 minutes to go toward separation of BSat, you may have heard Europe is developing the successor to Ariane 5.
Yes, the
Ariane decision
6.
was taken by the ESA Ministerial Council in late 2014 to develop Ariane 6. will be a more market-driven vehicle to meet market changes, including electrical propulsion. It will be, we are told, half the cost of Ariane 5 per kilo. It'll be a 3-stage vehicle with 2 versions, 2 or 4 boosters. One they call the Ariane 6-2, or the institutional version, which will carry 5 tons, and another called the Ariane 6-4, or the commercial version, which will carry 10.5 tons to geostationary transfer orbit. First launch 2020. Work on the base and the ground segment is well underway here. If you've been here, the new pad is 2.5 times as big as the Soyuz pad, and it's going up between the Soyuz and the Ariane 5 pads. And at the same time, a new version of the light Vega launcher called the Vega C, for Consolidated, is being readied to fly her maiden voyage next year.
Yep, it was Intelsat 33E and 36.
Of our
so on August 24th, 2016.
14 seconds is the time.
See, I found it.
For that, again, a moment of high concentration. The mood here in Jupiter is, as it was 16 minutes ago for Intelsat, focused.
Quiet.
Because tonight represents years of work for many of these people. Across the base, everyone is attentive as we near separation. They await the DDO's confirmation.
They await. That makes it sound really ominous.
Séparation BSat-4a.
There, the BSat-4a separation. So guys, that was the launch of
well, the applause and the smiles and the
BSat-4 and
handshakes
Intelsat,
and the
whatever.
faces tells the story. The final good news, and you hear the applause now from the people here in Jupiter.
25.
Ariane 5 has delivered
Goodbye.
her second passenger, BSat-4a, out over the Indian Ocean. Both satellites separated using transversal spin mode, you may have noticed.
Nope, both of them are spinning, yeah?
So from the tense minutes just moments ago, you can see the change here. Very buoyant, all across the Space Center and at all the points and posts where people are following the launcher and the satellites. Work is just beginning, or soon will be, at the different ground stations for both Intelsat and BSat